Hello and thanks for watching. This is an overview video to help you prepare for our first test for Unit 1 here, Discovery, Contact, and Exploration. Let's get started. Before we begin, I just want to say that this is a big picture overview of what we've studied so far, with a very strong emphasis on contextualization, seeing events as they relate to one another and to the bigger picture. It's not a detailed history or coverage of history. European interest in trade brought two worlds together, creating far-reaching effects. The Spanish, the French, the Dutch, and the English all planted seeds in the New World. Each had varied goals, and the interaction that each had with the environment and with native peoples of North America was directly tied to those goals. With this interaction came a massive exchange of goods, plants, animals, ideas, disease, and institutions. This Columbian exchange impacted both the New World and the Old. For example, new foods made their way to Europe, helping to feed the hungry. European diseases decimated native populations, up to 90% in some locations. The horse made natives on the Great Plains more mobile and efficient at hunting. The institution of slavery forcibly brought African Americans to the New World, laying the foundation for what would be the dividing issue that almost destroyed the young American Republic. Europeans also brought with them Eurocentric attitudes and beliefs. While each European country interacted with natives differently, it would be wrong to overgeneralize and say that Europeans treated native peoples fairly or equally. The French and the Dutch, with their more remote trading posts, relied on intermarriage and trade alliances to build economic and political alliances. The Spanish also intermarried with native peoples, but exploited native civilizations for gold and land, notably with the encomienda system. The English, whom will be at the center of our early part of this story, had as little to do with natives as possible. Oddly enough, it was support and aid from Native Americans that helped both the colonies of Virginia and Massachusetts through the initial phase of establishing a permanent settlement. The English apparently had short memories, and in pursuing their goal of farming in the New World, sought after native lands. This, of course, sparked numerous armed conflicts between the natives and the English, a pattern which would persist for the United States, culminating in 1890 with the Wounded Knee Massacre. The English colonies developed divergent economies based on the resources available and other geographic and environmental factors. The southern and middle colonies, with suitable land and a more agreeable climate, would have more success in large-scale farming. In the Chesapeake colonies, shown here in Virginia and Maryland, tobacco would be the preferred cash crop. The middle colonies would become the breadbasket of the British colonies in North America. The northern colonies would produce more small-scale subsistence or yeoman farming. As a result, they would turn to fishing and shipbuilding early on. It's extremely important that we remember that the economic principle of mercantilism was at the heart of the British administration of its colonies. This economic policy utilized colonies as a way to enrich the parent state. As the British colonies in North America were successful and profitable, the British developed a practice of salutary neglect, which is to say that the colonies were essentially left alone. While the colonies were left alone, significant developments occurred within them that would later contribute to the rift between the colonies and Great Britain. Politically speaking, salutary neglect permitted democracy and representative government to emerge and in fact thrive. A vibrant colonial economy emerged as well, and despite the fact that colonies were not supposed to trade with other countries, other than Britain that is, a significant amount of smuggling occurred. The colonies were an integral component of the Atlantic economy, in which goods passed in a triangular route between Europe, Africa, and the New World. Over time, the transatlantic connection between Britain and her colonies led to increased ties between the colonies and between the colonies and Great Britain. The transatlantic connection took the form of print culture, and the commercial ties and political communities that were based on English models previously mentioned. This Anglicanization would later expose a rift between the parent state and the colonies, as the colonists increasingly saw themselves on equal standing with Great Britain. While the colonies still possessed strong social ties to Great Britain, a distinct American identity was emerging as well. People living in the western sections of the colonies began to realize that they had regional interests. While Easterners still had strong ties to the Old World, those in the West were facing a different set of geographic factors, increased pressure from Native Americans, as well as from other opposing European groups, and poor infrastructure which limited their connection to the East. Again, this trend would persist well into the 19th century, as Americans on the frontier were forced to use their ingenuity to reinvent themselves constantly. Naturally, competition amongst the European powers continued, part of which would be fought on North American soil. The French and Indian War would both assert English dominance over the Atlantic seaboard and change the relationship between Britain and her colonies. Britain first sought to contain colonial growth by implementing the Proclamation of 1763 and enforcing the Navigation Acts. Enforcing both of these and the French and Indian War itself required a significant bit of funding. As Britain began to tax the colonies, colonial unity was intensified. While the colonists certainly experienced unity during the French and Indian War, it was the change in British colonial policy which united colonists against the English. In 1754, Benjamin Franklin's Join or Die cartoon was created to unite colonists with their British allies against the French. It would soon be used to unite colonists against the English. That's all, and thank you for watching. I hope that helped clear up any questions you may have had for our first test. Please make sure you consult all of the materials we looked at in class, including the crossword puzzle for vocab and the timeline for chronology. If you have any other questions, please feel free to post them to our Google page. Take care.